Now we're moving to the absolute veteran of the Bachelor franchise, starring in Rachel Lindsay's Bachelorette season 13, 2 seasons of Paradise, and Bachelor Winter Games friend, Batch legend, none other than the Deanie Babies himself, Dean Unglert. Thank you so much for coming on, Dean.
Yeah. Hey, of course. And you know, it's funny. I don't think veteran is a word you want synonymous with being on dating shows. So it's a very kind introduction, but yeah, veteran, man, it's a bummer to hear that sometimes.
It's not wrong. It's the truth of the matter, and it all worked out.
It all worked out. That's right.
An awesome girl by your side right now. And I remember, quick little backstory before we get into the whole trading secrets episode. But Dean and I became close buddies right when I got off the show. And I just think about the times we had, like in 2018. It was such a blast. And there's a story about Dean that I don't know if I've actually ever said it on a podcast, but there's a story about Dean I always talk about. And it is like Dean to a T, but it's hilarious. So we're getting ready, and tell me if you remember this, but you come to the Bills game. We're tailgating. We're having the time of our lives, and we get invited to go in the Pagula's box. So this is Monday Night Football. God. Buffalo, but you know what's the story I'm telling?
I know exactly what
Buffalo Bills are playing the New England Patriots, and so my parents are with us, and my parents are being parents, like, Dean, Jason, Blake, get your shit together. You guys have beer all over. You're just in the bus lot, screaming, shout, partying like animals. Like, you got to be a professional in here. I'm like, all right. And I say to Dean, like, Dean, this is who they are. This is Kim Pagula. Like, just be good, okay? He's like, yeah, I got this. We walk in, he beelines over to Kim Pagula, who has got this like ultimate presence. Like, no one's even around her. And in fact, in this suite, it was amazing how it was set up. Do you remember this? She had her own this beautiful carpet. It was like this beautiful carpet with these chairs. It looked like you were in this very elegant family room with a big TV, and she was sitting there by herself watching the pregame. Uninterrupted, Dean comes up to her and says, "Oh, so nice to meet you. Thank you for having me. I love your royal blue sweater, your LA Dodgers royal blue sweater." And I was like, oh my God, we've been here for 3 minutes. This is a disaster.
Well, wait a second. That wasn't even the worst of it. I thought you were going to get to the part, and you even mentioned the carpet. I'm pretty sure I spilled a beer not even 2 minutes later. I spilled a beer all over her brand new carpet.
I forgot about that. You spilled the beer everywhere.
I thought you were going to get to. That was that was when I looked around and I was like, I got to get the heck out of here.
This was bad. And then I have no clue still to this day, and I need to figure it out. But Kevin and Astrid were there, and somehow Kevin, who's a huge Patriots fan, was wearing a Patriots jersey. It was like third quarter. The Bills are getting absolutely stomped by the Patriots. Yeah. He somehow snuck into that suite and had a Patriots jersey on. And this is for anyone out there, for an owner's suite, I didn't even really know this, but wearing a different team's jersey in their suite, it's like, bringing a 12-pack of Coca-Cola into Pepsi headquarters. Like, you don't do it. And I remember when he walked in, it was ugly. Like, my friend who is with the Pagula's daughter, they're engaged. He was like, get them out of here right now. And that was like a mass exit at the time. And the Buffalo owner suite was done.
Not only the other team's jersey, but your guys' arch rivals jersey too.
Right, exactly.
That's like wearing a Broncos jersey into the Raiders suite. Very similar. I see what you're saying.
Exactly.
That might be more bold than me walking up to the owner of the team and saying what I said. But
exactly. So you live, you learn. I am still close with my buddy who's engaged to the Pagulas, but I have yet to ever be in their suite again. So you gotta love that.
Yeah, I'll take some of the blame for that one.
All right, team effort. But you know what? Before we get into the TV side of things, I don't know that everyone listening would know this, but it's my understanding for the last year or so, you've actually lived out of your van. And this is a money podcast. So I'm curious if you could tell us and walk through kind of the expenses associated with that, why you went from living in an apartment to a van. Tell me the whole story on what it's like living in your van.
Yeah, well, that kind of comes with an asterisk. The van thing, I lived in the van for a solid 7 months, broke my leg in Switzerland skiing, required surgery. The recovery time was 8 to 12 months. Over that recovery time, I basically moved into my girlfriend's apartment with her to because I'm hobbling, I can barely even freaking climb onto the toilet seat. There's no way I'm able to live in the van. So the van kind of has been relegated to more of a recreational vehicle at this point. My girlfriend and I just bought a house and are renting in LA, so it's the van gets used whenever I'm able to use it. But the costs, I appreciate this podcast because you're right. I think that it is taboo to talk about finances for whatever freaking reason. And I think that one of the biggest reasons for it is it kind of gives the financial institutions the control, and it gives the employers the control and all that kind of stuff. So
100%.
I started a travel blog outlining all of the expenses of things like flights, hotels, food. Like if you want to go to Egypt, jump on there and see how much it costs me to go to Egypt. And I have a similar post for my van.
Cool.
The van itself was obviously the biggest expense. The van itself cost me, it was like just over $27,000. I personally have a bad financial history up until a few years ago, so I had to pay for it in cash, which was a big bummer. It, took a big hit there. And then after that, I probably put like another $20,000 worth of upgrades into it with like solar and a bunch of other stuff that I can't remember, like a roof rack, like a bunch of, like refrigerator, sink, like all that kind of stuff added up to about 20 grand. And then the day to day, man, the day to day is not bad. It's basically like you eat what you would normally eat. I've got like a stovetop burner in there. So you can like cook spaghetti or, rice or whatever the heck it is that you want to eat. I'm not much of a chef, so I eat out a lot, but the expenses, like honestly, so that was actually one of the big reasons I wanted to do it too, was because I was traveling so much that if I was like international for, 8 months out of the year, but I'm still paying, especially in LA, such high rent prices, I was paying like $1,800 a month in rent.
Mhm.
By being in a van for a year, I saved, just over $20,000. So I could be like, okay, cool, I saved $20,000. Let me go ahead and ball out a little bit more in my van because I know that it's going to essentially like be a return on investment for me in that sense. So that part's
So
been
that was my
nice. And
question.
like I said, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you from an ROI perspective. I'm kind of scratching some numbers here. Let's say 50 grand all in. Let's say rent in LA is 3-4K. You don't have rent. Obviously, your girlfriend does. Net, you think you've come out from a return perspective positive? It sounds like you have.
Well, it's so subjective because there are so many different things to consider. Like I would say I came out on top tenfold,
Mhm.
if not for saving on rent, but for buying the van, converting it, going back on Bachelor in Paradise, and being the guy that lived in a van. Like that alone, I think like got me. It kind of gets you more brand deals with companies you want to work with. It gets you
Sure.
more Instagram followers because people are like talking about how weird it is. And so on that avenue alone, I think it was absolutely worth it. And I love it. I still use it all the time to this day. So
The underdog story sells. There's no doubt about it. When Dean came into Paradise and was like the hottest dude to ever walk the planet, people are like, this guy. He comes in, long hair, mustache, living out of van. It was, oh, poor Dean. And boom, followers go up by 500,000 and your
dude,
rates triple.
well, that basically exactly, and that was the biggest thing too. I was like, I really didn't want to go back to Paradise that second time, and I was like, you know what, screw it. If I'm gonna do it, I'm just gonna like make a caricature out of myself, like let people make fun of myself before people can make fun of me, kind of thing. And I think like the Bachelor was like, oh, this guy, like he's kind of like beating us to it. Like they were almost like a little sour about it in a sense, in my opinion. I mean, I could be mistaken, but at the end of the day, yeah, it was all fun. It all worked out. The van, I do think, has paid for itself a few times over. In addition to saving rent and then that, and it's nice to be able to like go out now like recreationally with Kaylin and not have to worry about getting a hotel. So that saves you a couple $100 a night, like that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's part of me is a bummed because I didn't really have the chance to dive in to van life as much as I wanted to as a single person. I basically got the van, converted it, and then went straight to Bachelor in Paradise. And
Mhm.
then, like single van life is one thing because you can kind of do what you want, when you want, where you want. But then you get a
Sure.
girlfriend in the mix, and it's kind of like, okay, you have to take into consideration other people's wants and needs. So, no regrets, obviously, but that's like kind of one of the things I look back on. And I was like, I wish I could have like really sunk my teeth into the van life experience and like been a complete, like I do consider myself still pretty nomadic, but
Sure.
like I wish I could have like escalated it and amplified it a little bit more for at least like 6 months or so. But
Yeah, that makes sense. And one of the things you just alluded to is the fact you do have a partner now, and obviously things change, and that you guys did buy a house. And I thought from the research I did, it's in Vegas. So if
yeah,
from a dollar and cents perspective, I know Vegas is a very solid place to live from a cost of living adjustment, right?
right.
0% state income tax. I believe property taxes are in the 0.5%, which are the lowest in the entire country. And then sales tax are in like 6.5%. So cost of living adjustment, it's the place to be. Was that part of the reason that you are now, and are you building a home? Would you buy a home? Was that part of the reason? And what's the plan for that home?
No, yeah, you nailed it right in the head. That was a huge part of it. I was talking to my buddy back in like September, October last year. And he was like, yeah, like, I don't know why you guys are still living in LA. Like, you should get a place like Nevada or Texas or something where you pay no income tax,
Mhm.
especially for, people like you and me, where all of our income is 1099, and
Yep.
so income tax is like it's like a pretty big impact and
Sure.
influencer thing on what our what's going on. So we were like, yeah, like let's look into it. And then Kaylin's grandparents and her aunt and uncle live in Las Vegas as well, and so we wanted to buy a house because renting sucks. I think, you throw so much money away renting throughout the course of a lifetime that eventually you're just like, why are we doing this? Like, let's start putting our mortgage towards the house rather than a rent payment being thrown away.
Right.
And we were looking around LA, and dude, in LA, it's like we were looking at like houses that were like 1.5 million. But
Good
it's
closet.
like a fixer upper. Yeah, exactly. It's small. It's a fixer upper. It's in a location that we don't really want to live in. And then we started talking about it and like mulling over our options. And we were like, well, we love Vegas. We go out there to visit your family all the time. And we got a 3-bed, 3-bath for just under $500,000. And like the HOA fees are like basically non-existent out there. So yeah, as far as like an investment goes, that was kind of like a move.
That's good stuff. One thing you mentioned was 1099 and influencer world. We have a full episode. We have 2 CEOs of the biggest influencing companies talking all about the ins and outs of influencing. It's a wild, wild west. And I talk about the ins and outs of rates and money I've made. I open that all up because you had said something about the stigma of money. The more information that we have about money in different industries, the better we can be as like retail consumers. And to your point, I couldn't agree more that the system is currently set up to work with the masses. And as long as the masses don't know the ins and outs of money and where it's made and how and why and what employees in their companies, the same positions are getting paid, the better the people at the top are. So conversations like this are very helpful. But one thing I'm surprised about is that you said you had a bad financial history. The reason I'm surprised about that is because I remember in Vegas, I'll never forget this, when we were coming into the hotel, I had literally like 3 bags. Like, what a joke. I had a carry-on, I had a backpack, and I had a full bag. And we were there. I mean, we had like 8 or 10 events or whatever. It was 4 days. You come in the smallest little itty bitty suitcase I ever saw in my life. And I pulled you over. I'm like, Dean, how the hell? Like, you got to teach me how you did that. And one of the comments you made to me, and this wasn't verbatim, but it was something along the lines of, I like to live with as little as possible and make the biggest use out of what I have. To me, and I remember we played some blackjack, and I bought in a few on $500 or something. You bought in $100, and I know you're doing well. I'm like, come on, buy in some more. You're like, no, I'm pretty I'm cheap with my money. I want it to go further than the average Joe. So technically, I would think like you're a huge budgeter. You know how to spread that dollar. And I heard that you had a bad financial history. So walk me through that place of your explanation to the bad financial history and how you corrected it.
Yeah, well, for the record, to comment on that real quick, I think you just got more of a complex skincare routine than I do. So that's kind of why you're more luggage than I do. So yeah, I don't know. When I was in college, I went to the hospital. I was like, had some drunken night out, got tased by the police because I'm an idiot. I was very young. I was like 19 at the time. And I was just like, being a buffoon. I think I was like peeing on the street, and the cop told me to stop peeing, and I like started running away. And he tased me, and I went to the hospital for that. And the hospital bill as a uninsured college kid was like, it was like 10 grand, which really isn't that much. But for me at the time, it was like enough to me being like, I'm going to forget this ever happened. I'm not going to do anything. And I'm going to hopefully like the statute of limitations kicks in 7 years and it just gets, wiped clean from my record. Sure enough, not the case. I also had like some student loans that I defaulted on. So I came off of the Bachelorette probably like $25,000 in debt, which again isn't that much, but
Sure.
it can be for sure. And they were all delinquent accounts, and so my my credit scores were barely holding on above 500. And that's why when I first got my first couple like influencer checks or whatever, I think my very first check I ever got was like $10,000 for shilling some sort of mattress on Instagram, right? And I was like, $10,000 for a mattress for me to just post, like, and I get a free mattress out of it. That's great. So I did a couple of those, and immediately, I was like, the very first thing I did was paid off all of my debts to like the creditors, whatever it is.
Sure.
And that was, I want to say, like 3.5 years ago. And so even since then, like I'm still obviously paying the price for being so careless of it when I was younger, but it's definitely improved pretty significantly. So yeah, if I could go back and obviously not do those things, I would, but just have to pay the price now, I guess.
Yeah. And people that I've met with through Restart, I mean, I think the biggest thing is being able to plug those holes and then figure out what the behavior was and finding solutions to make sure that behavior doesn't repeat itself. Because everybody fucks up their decision making with expenses, whether it's buying, saving, selling. I mean, everybody does. I think it's just how quickly you can recover. There's a reason why right now there's literally $420 billion of rolling credit card debt in the United States month to month. There's a reason for that. Yet there's only 39% of people that have $1,000 in cash should they need the money right away. So it's a crazy world we live in. But as we're talking about money, we have had someone from Survivor on this episode. We've had someone from Amazing Race, MTV The Challenge, Big Brother, and we've talked a lot about the ins and outs of their contract. Now, you're a 4-time Bachelor appearance guy. Sorry to rub it in, but you are. Now, I talk on this episode too about some of my Bachelor contracts. So I talked about, how we weren't paid on Bachelorette. I talked about what I was paid on Bachelor in Paradise, but I decided not to go. I forego that. I signed the contract, then pulled it back. I talked about what the Bachelor contract looked like. And then I was also recruited to do a podcast for The Bachelor. I ended up turning down, but I talk about that. So I'm curious from your perspective. We know on season 13, at least I would believe that you weren't paid. Now, correct me if I'm wrong if you were, but I'm curious, how did those contracts change from show to show, if you're willing to speak about it? And did you leverage it all, the fact that your notoriety and familiar face fame became greater for each show, therefore your price point would have, or at least should have, gone up?
Right. No, in theory, that's absolutely right. So yes, so I did not get paid for Bachelorette. And that was a tricky time too, because Bachelorette, you take a leave of absence from work, you're not getting paid for the time that you're spending on the show. You still have your bills to pay when you're back home. And I got super lucky because my roommates at the time, when I left, even though I thought I was going to be gone for like a couple days, a week tops, they started Airbnb my room out right away. So I didn't have to pay rent, fortunately, while I was gone. And then I got back from the show and I was like struggling for cash, wasn't sure what I was going to do, go back to work, but like obviously paychecks don't come right away. And then they hit me up and they're like, hey, do you want to do Bachelor in Paradise, this other show? It pays $400 a day. You could be there for up to like 30 days, something like that. So I was like, oh yeah, great. $400 a day, 30 days, $12,000. Okay. That's fantastic. And then I start talking to some friends and they're like, well, you should get more money because you're kind of like the guy coming off the show. You're going to be like the most, you're who they want most from your season to go to Paradise, minus like Peter, obviously. And I was like, okay, cool. Pay me $800 a day. And they were like, no, dude, go yourself. Like, that much. We'll pay you $600. And I'm so certain, like at that point I was like, out of principle, I just like wanted them to pay. Could have been $1 more, but out of principle, I wanted them to pay me more than they were offering everybody else, just because I thought I was hot for some reason. So they paid me
you are hot.
$600 a day for 30 days. And I've heard other people, I can't remember who it was, but I've heard people getting upwards of like $1,000 a day for Paradise. But at the time, like I said, I was struggling for cash because I took 2 months off of work, didn't see a single dollar for those 2 months. So $600 a day for 30 days, 18 grand. Like I'm seeing that and I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I would have done this for, $100 a day kind of thing.
For sure.
Go on that show. And I'm sure you talked about this on the podcast before, but in my experience, at least, most of the money that comes from going on any type of reality TV show is from the endorsements that follow afterwards.
For sure. Yeah.
So we filmed Paradise, and then I get a call. I left Paradise single. Obviously, that whole season was pretty complicated for me. But I got a call. I was like doing some event in Canada, and the producers were like, "Hey, we want you to be the Bachelor for us next year. Do you want to do it?" And in the back of my head, I was like, "No, I don't want to do it. Like, I just went through the worst season of my life. Like, I don't even know. I don't want to get like married anytime soon, anything like that."
Right.
But I was like, "Well, it's too big of an opportunity to pass up." So I said yes, and I think that they offer it to a couple of people every single year. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Send the contract over. So they sent the contract over. It was for I think it was like 75 grand.
Okay.
To be the Bachelor for the season. And I'm sure you probably got something similar to that, right?
It was
not price, but at least like.
So ours was 100. So mine was 100.
Nice.
And then what they did is they gave 3 contracts and we were all buddies. So we just compared them. So me, Colton, and Blake each had contracts for 100. And knowing that it was going to be between one of us 3, there was actually a thought in my process. I might actually reverse negotiate this. I might, because to your point, the 100K, I'll go get that in one deal if I'm the Bachelor.
Sure.
So I was thinking about like, I'll take it for 25. I'll take it for 0. I ended up not doing that. I don't think it would have mattered anyway. But to your question, I had to throw that in there.
No, that's a great point. I think that would have been a great negotiating tactic. I talked to a couple other former Bachelors and Bachelorettes, and I was like, hey, like, just so you guys know, like, I'm being considered for this opportunity. Just so I can like kind of price myself into it. What were you guys paid for your cooperation and all that kind of stuff? And 100 seems pretty good. I was pretty happy with 75. And again, like you just said, like anything would have, like, the money doesn't come from that contract. The money comes from after the fact. So
Yep.
I said yes to it, and obviously they ended up, I think they went with Ari that year instead, which, like, forever grateful. Obviously, it's kind of led me down this path that I am now with Kaylin. So, and then those other shows were like, I kind of like just stopped caring, because I was like, what's the difference between $1,000 to $2,000 per show? If, again, like, I'm not going for the big paycheck that comes from it. So I kind of stopped caring to negotiate so much, until the last Bachelor in Paradise season I went on. I was like, yeah, guys, like, I'll do it, but you got to pay me like $20,000 an episode or a day or something, like some absurd amount. Like,
give me that Chris Harrison contract.
dude, honestly, too. And I was like when I said it too, I was like so vindicated. I was like, they're not going to get me for a dollar less than what I need right now. And then eventually, as time wore on, I was like, you know what, screw it. I think I went down for like $602 a day or something like that.
Okay. So similar to Paradise round 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
And dude, those shows are crazy, because it's like, there's so many contestants to pull from, that like your presence doesn't really matter to them that much. You know?
No, just a pawn in their game. And it's a great game, and one I enjoy watching thoroughly. But to your point, there's so many people, and there's so many great storylines they could run with to draw ratings. For Winter Games though, and if you said it, I apologize, but what did it look like for Winter Games?
It was very, very similar. It was like $400 a day.
400.
That one filmed over a much less shorter amount of time.
Yeah.
Winter Games was like the one thing where it was like, we were just doing it because it was like interesting and fun for the first time ever they had done it. But that one was like, the ratings were horrible for it. The pay was bad. The setting wasn't that great. We were like in Vermont, and it had snowed in so long. And so it was just like one of those things where it was like, why are we all here? Like, this is kind of just a waste of everyone's time.
For sure. And I think you've been perceived in so many different capacities, like the hot single guy, the adventure nomad, the player. Like, you've had so many stigmas because of the different ways that you were at least captured on the show. I don't really want to dive into that. I know you've talked about it on so many podcasts. What I do want to dive into is how that actually affected monetization. Did you see a big change in monetization when you were kind of like the villain on Paradise 1 versus coming off as, the good guy looking to commit off Paradise 2? What did that part look like from a business perspective?
That's a good question. It's actually hard to say. So those first 3 shows all happened within like 7 months of each other. Bachelorette straight into Winter Game, or straight into Bachelor in Paradise, straight into Winter Games. We filmed Bachelorette in March of 2000, I think it was 18, and then we filmed Winter Games in December of that same year. So it was like, I don't think there was really enough time to kind of gauge what was maybe like benefiting me more monetarily, because it all kind of happened at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was crazy to go from, because I think I made, in my job in LA before going on the show, I made like $50,000 a year, which is fine. Like, it was enough to like get by and do what I needed to do.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, like, those deals start getting thrown at you. So like, that my whole plan, not plan, who the heck has a plan? But I was like, all right, I'm going to take a year off of work, figure out what I want to do with my life, like career goals moving forward, and then like dive headfirst into that. And I never really had a chance fully, like, I'm still 3.5 years removed, still trying to figure out exactly what that's going to be. But even I hear people talk about, like, on Instagram, once you get over like 1 million followers or whatever, your rates skyrocket, like parabolic, through the roof kind of thing. I haven't really experienced that too much. My rates have like probably like just on a linear increase have gone up as my followers have increased. So
yeah, we've had one of the CEOs that came on talked all about the ins and outs of how they look at this. Is some crazy stuff. All the ins and outs of how they look at deals. Obviously, engagement's imperative. One of the reasons Bachelor people do so well is the concentration of our demographic, and that in general our engagement is so much higher than almost other reality shows or other areas of influencing. But he did talk about this was fascinating. They now have software that tracks every caption and every word you say in a story, and what it does is it correlates some type of TV kind of rating, movie rating, to how you are performing. Like, are you G-rated, PG, PG-13, R-rated? He goes, 90% of influencers are in the R-rated category. So when I get the big brands, the Coca-Colas, the Walmarts, like the biggest players, they will never work with anyone, almost never even in the PG-13. So the biggest and best deals are going to be your G and PG rated people, which is why some of the kids like that are opening the toys on YouTube and stuff, and this is things I
Yeah.
learned literally yesterday from this guy, have by far the highest rates. So you could have the same people, same show, same following, even almost same engagement, and their rates, brands, and specialties could be just all over the place. But as we're talking about this, the ins and outs of rates and marketing, did you, when you signed up for the show, did you ever think that this could be a financial opportunity? Or did you just say, you know what, I'm sick of work. I don't like where I'm at. Let's just roll the dice, see what happens.
Yeah, definitely the latter in that sense for sure.
Okay.
Like I said, up until I got that first deal for that mattress, I like didn't even realize that you could monetize Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think I had talked to like Ashley Iaconetti after filming Bachelorette, like seeing if I should go on Bachelor in Paradise, and she was like, it would literally be a horrible like career / financial move for you not to go to Paradise. Because she was like, I've had so many opportunities come to me through it, and I was like, opportunities? What do you mean opportunity? Like this was before Bachelorette even aired, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So I was completely oblivious to it, but obviously super grateful for all the opportunities that have come from it. Like, yeah, I don't know. I like you kind of mentioned earlier, I try to keep my overhead costs pretty low.
Yeah.
And as long as like the income is continuing to go up, it's like a nice little gap there, I guess.
There you go. And you talked about opportunities, and one of the opportunities I saw that you have, and you've had for quite a while now, I think I tallied up 152 episodes, could be wrong there, but is the I Suck at Dating podcast with Jared.
Oh, yeah.
And I know you guys have had Jared in there and you've had Vanessa in there. And so tell me a little bit about your vision into the podcast space now that you're there, from a rewarding factor and also a potential lucrative factor. What's your overall take on it now that you have a podcast that's been out for that long?
Yeah, we've been kind of hot and cold with the podcast. As I'm obviously, you're hosting the podcast now. The work put in, it can vary from anything from an hour a week to 10 to 20 hours a week, depending on exactly how involved you are in like the post processing and all that kind of stuff. We have a pretty sweet deal with iHeartRadio. So, Jared and I are essentially like the on-air hosts. We'll come in for an hour and a half a week, talk about whatever we have to talk about. iHeartMedia does all the sales for all the ad spots. They do all the post processing. They do all the sound engineering, all that kind of stuff. And because of all that, we've structured our deal. Well, I guess they structured it, and we agreed to the way that they structured it by like giving iHeart a pretty solid percentage of it. And I think that there are podcasts or podcast hosting networks, whatever it is, like I'm not sure which one you're on, but there are like podcast companies that give you like a huge chunk of the pie of the ad sales or the ad revenue. But you're required to do a lot more of the legwork. And so it's like a constant battle in my head, like, oh, should we be doing a lot more of the legwork to take more of the piece of the pie, or should we be grateful with what we have and like very minimal work, but with very, still decent rewards? I really enjoy it. The checks for us come quarterly, which is, fine. It's not like I'm not like getting rich off of our podcast.
Sure.
I would say I've made probably like 50 grand a year on the podcast since its inception. And when I always tie it back to that job that I had in LA before going on the show, where I'm getting paid 50 grand a year to talk on a podcast for an hour and a half a week. Like that I'm the luckiest person in the world for that,
Right.
But then I know there's like other people, like my peers and my friends that have podcasts that have kind of like told me their figures a little bit, and they're raking in like 300 grand a year, 400 grand a year just on their podcast. I'm sure I don't know if you talked about Caitlin's numbers, but I'm sure her income off of her podcast is astronomical. But anything I can get, I'm grateful to get whatever I get. So
you wouldn't believe it unless you saw it. You wouldn't believe it unless you saw it. And I'm going to hope to have her on once to talk about that, because that's not my place. But yeah, she does very successful with that. So what's interesting about the pod space, again, open book, I'll tell you my whole deal here. So I'm with Dear Media. They might actually cut this out, but I'm going to put it out there because I think people should be talking about this.
Yeah,
Dear Media, mine is they give me about $1,000 a month to do for my production back. So I have guys that help me with booking and help me with pre-production docs and stuff. One I'm reading off right now. And then they do a 70-30 split. So I get 70%, they get 30%. And then other than that, there's no other like guaranteed or income or anything like that. But they do all post editing. They do all the behind the scenes work, but we book our guests, we do it, we send it in, they do the rest. Now, what was different is the Bachelor podcast. I did some negotiating. It was originally going to be me, Hannah Ann, and Tasha, and I'll probably get in trouble for talking about this, but again, it's my business, so I can talk about it. And I'm not contractually obligated not to talk about it, but they offered me that podcast 2.5%. It was a 1-year deal, 2.5%, and it was 100 grand a year guaranteed. And I ended up deciding not to do that. For a bunch of reasons. One, I just think so. The title of that podcast is clickbait. And so for me, it's just like it doesn't at all fit into my brand. And to your point, if you're going to be doing this and speaking about it every week and planning for it, it could be exhausting, it could get hot, it could cold, it can monetize, it can not monetize. And it's just like for me, I just don't have an interest in that. I'm going to get bored with it.
Yeah.
This is the stuff I've been doing since I've been 15 and I love it and I love talking about it. So even if it doesn't do well, I feel like it's a good source of like information. I enjoy it. And so that was one reason. The other reason is it kind of like competes with the whole idea, kind of competes with what Caitlin's doing. And I'm not going to go into the same area, same market that's going to compete with her. So yeah, but it's interesting to see how these networks just like work certain. I've heard some deals that are just atrocious, and then some people who absolutely crush it. Then you see Joe Rogan, best podcast in the country, getting $500 million for fucking exclusive. It's a wild world we live in, man. It's a wild
world. What was the 2.5% you said? 2.5% like ownership of the podcast?
So yeah. So the clickbait one with the Bachelor group was the $100K a year, and then it was 2.5% of ad revenue.
Oh, nice.
So obviously, like right now, I get 70% of ad revenue, but I don't get the guarantee. But the reason I made that wasn't a financial decision; it was more of the other things that didn't make sense.
Well, that's kind of my thing too, because my podcast, "Help I Suck at Dating." If you're listening to this, feel free to
Hell yeah,
and check it out.
Hell yeah.
I don't necessarily love talking about dating topics once a week, but it's like at the end of the day, like I could talk about travel or photography once a week, I guess, but it's still great at the end of the day, like have a platform to discuss things. Like, let's say there's something that came up that I really wanted to talk about with whoever wants to listen. It's nice to be able to have that platform to be able to do that. And without that podcast, you could probably find a way, but like, it's still like a nice, consistent conversation that you're able to have, I guess, even if it's not necessarily the topic that I want to be talking about. Like, there are times where I'm like, especially when I was single,
yeah,
and everyone's like, hey, like, what's the update in your dating life? And I'm like, man, I don't care to update you guys what's going on in my dating life right now. Like, it's definitely gotten a little bit better since Caitlin and like having a girlfriend and some stability in that.
Yeah.
But there were times where I was like, get me the fuck off this podcast, dude. Like, I come into the studio and my anxiety, my heart is beating through
just
my
get so high.
Oh, dude, it was the worst.
And iHeart, I give them so much damn credit, because anytime I go on an iHeart podcast, I'll start sweating bullets because the pre-production is so damn good, and they find ways to like get the shit out of you. Like last time I'm on with Ben and Ashley, and within I don't think I cried on the fucking Bachelorette, and I go on their podcast, and I swear to God, in the first 5 minutes, I start talking about my brother, and there's this moment I remember seeing him bullied, and I literally in 5 minutes crying on their podcast. I'm like, what the fuck? How do you guys do this every time?
Yeah. That's credit to Ben and Ashley, because they're pretty good at what they do.
I love it. So you talk about Help I Suck at Dating. That's Dean's podcast. You obviously are dating. Is financials a topic that you and Caitlin talk about? Like, is this open conversation, or you guys kind of just run in your own worlds and not bring it to the table?
Yeah, super open conversation, which has been great. We actually have like a joint checking account.
It's amazing.
Let's say we actually got that pretty early on in our relationship too.
Wow.
Let's say we're going on a date, or we want to travel somewhere. What we'll do is, instead of like buying it and then asking for money, we'll just we have like a joint debit card, so like we'll just use that joint card whenever we do stuff together. And that's been great. There are like sometimes points of contention where, like, let's say like I'm driving somewhere, or like let's say she's driving somewhere that she was already supposed to be driving to, and she uses the joint card to get gas. I'm like, why are you using the joint card to get gas if you're driving there already? Like, you should just use your own credit card. Very like small little tips like that, but nothing too serious. But yeah, especially with like buying a house together, finances have to be pretty open and honest in terms of like what we're dealing with. And it's interesting because I think I've actually kind of thought about this a little bit lately. One of the reasons that we are able to be so open and honest is because like things are good. Like, like we have money to spend, we can live comfortably, we can buy what we want to buy if we want to buy it bad enough. Mm-hmm. There's never really a point where we have to like really kind of like rub two pennies together to make something happen, sort of thing. So I'm always curious what will and what would happen if, like times were a little tougher, we had to budget a little bit better, but it definitely makes it a lot easier knowing kind of what everyone's working with in the relationship. You know what I mean?
I think it's a good system. Open communication, and that works really well. Caitlin and I have been dating for two years, and we don't have anything like that. We have a system, but we don't have a joint account. I think that makes so much sense. It's brilliant. And I think having those conversations are fantastic, especially because if you look at divorce rate, the number one reason for divorces is financial distress. So getting
Right.
ahead of that and having those conversations is so imperative. You talked a little bit about the travel side of things, Dean, and
Yeah.
there aren't many people, but there certainly are people I think that have really branded themselves and created a platform in different areas outside of the Bachelorette. I would definitely consider you one of those people. I think your photography work, your video work's incredible. The places you go and how you do it, and also with your blog. Is that somewhere like in 5 years from now, you want to continue to just be the travel guy? Like, what does the vision look like for you?
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate you saying that. It's really nice of you to say.
Yeah, I mean it
Uh,
too.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I remember I had a conversation with like some TV executive like 3 years ago, and they were like, "All right, yeah, like great, let's make a show together. What do you want your show to be about?" You know, like basically just like a thought exercise. Like, what would
Hmm.
your show be about? I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, I like to travel, I guess. I like dogs. And she's like, everyone likes to travel. Everyone likes dogs. What is unique about you that you could like have a show about? Like, what would your thing be? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I don't have a single gosh darn thing in the world to even have a show about. And it sticks with me all the time too. And that's kind of one of the things like the catalyst to like get the van, kind of become more nomadic, learn photography. And obviously I still have so much to learn on all those fronts. And I still think I'm so far less capable than so many of my like people that I look up to. But as you kind of like dial it in and figure out exactly what works for you. But yeah, I mean, some sort of like travel centric. I don't know. I don't really know what the future holds, but there was like an interesting time of like an identity crisis where like I didn't know who I was. So I like started just doing everything I possibly could do until I started liking something. And I still feel like I'm in the discovery phase for sure.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. Um, 5 years from now, man, that's a scary time to think about because like I don't even know where I'm going to be tomorrow or in a year from now. But if it is something involving those things, I'd be pretty stoked.
Cool.
Um, I
Identity
don't know.
crisis. Go ahead.
Yeah, identity crisis. My thing is, it's like it's great to be able to make money on Instagram. It's great to be able to make money on a podcast. But I'm not putting like a whole lot of stock into those things. You know, like I
Sure.
don't expect to be making money on Instagram in 5 years. I don't
Right.
expect to be making money on my podcast in 5 years. Hopefully, those two things are still going on, but I don't expect that. So, I'm we're working on trying to build the foundation to figure out what we're going to be doing 5, 10, 15 years down the line.
Yeah, I think being able to like parlay passive income within the social media space, podcasting, and then outside of it right now is
Right.
critically important. But from this two CEOs that we had on in the influencing space, if there's one common denominator, it's that the influencing social media world is going nowhere. Maybe the platforms may change, but it's going nowhere and the spend is getting higher. And they said that COVID actually has changed the game so much because these people that were spending the money on TV, which was no longer there, and on the billboards, which people weren't driving by, and the radio stations that they weren't listening to anymore because of the fact that commutes don't end. They started deploying all their money towards social media expenditures, and what they saw is that the return was 2-3x of what it was when they were doing the other marketing. And so
Wow.
he actually said the dollars, COVID has been a huge blessing for their businesses, and they said the dollars have never gotten bigger, especially from companies that are more traditional that had a tougher time kind of thinking about the whole means of social media, which is kind of a fascinating topic. I'm
For
curious of
sure.
this. I saw that you have the ring on, and this is not planned. This is not anything of that nature. But I'm very curious your thoughts. You might get engaged at some point. I'm not asking you to talk about that, but
Sure.
the whole ring buying process, and we are doing an episode. We have a jeweler because that's a whole different nightmare. And anybody and everybody that can get shortcuts in that industry will need them and we'll give them. But what is your thought process on the ring buying process? Like, are you the guy that's going to go buy the big diamond? Are you the guy that's going to be like, no, you're going to wear like, I want you to wear a rubber band ring because that's more meaningful? Like, give me your philosophy on it.
I fully despise the jewelry industry,
I knew that was going to be the case. That's why
especially
I
the
asked.
engagement ring industry, man.
I knew
And
it.
you want to know what's funny actually is to kind of take it back to even like the bachelor negotiations when they're like, we want you to be the bachelor. Like I met with one of the heads of the studio, and I was like sitting there in the studio with them, and I was like, hey, like just so you guys know, like at the end of the show, I don't want to ask a girl to marry me with a big diamond ring. Like I don't believe in diamond rings. I don't believe in that type of engagement. And they looked me dead in the eyes and they said, Dean, if you're the bachelor, you're gonna fucking ask the person to marry you with a diamond ring. And I was like, I probably just lost it right then and there by saying that, because it's so crazy to me that people are going to go and, shell out, what is it, like a quarter of your yearly salary to buy a ring for someone. Yeah, it's a beautiful diamond ring, but
Who do you think came up with that strategy?
right,
Quarter
exactly.
your salary. It's this companies that sell them. Yeah. But tell me a little bit. I mean, you said you despise it. So give me the full opinion of Dean on the diamond ring engagement ring process.
I'm all about big expenses are perfectly fine. They come with life, but as long as they add practical value to your life,
Mhm.
you buy a house, you live in the house, you buy a car, you drive the car, you buy a $30,000 ring. What is that ring doing for you other than, like, it's essentially giving you social status, like bragging rights to your friends, like, oh my God, look at this beautiful ring my fiance bought for me. It just, that money could be so much better spent somewhere else. And then you even like look at, obviously, like diamond mining and how like unethical that is, and
Mhm.
the carbon footprint of all that kind of stuff too. But the biggest thing for me is like the practical application of a big expense like that. A diamond ring has absolutely no practical value in my opinion.
The word
Sure,
the
your
word
fiance might love you more for getting you a $30,000 ring, but in my opinion, it's like, if Caitlin didn't love me because I didn't buy her a $30,000 engagement ring, then she's not the girl for me. You know what I mean? Like, if that is like a deal breaker for the person that you're getting engaged to, as long as that's what you value, in my opinion, they're not the person for you.
Yep, I think that makes a lot of sense. I need to get Caitlin on board with that too. I think that might be late though, because that's already been bought. But you're right. You talk about the actual flex. It's literally the ultimate flex. It's a representation of, like, okay, maybe a quarter of your income. It's like the guy's flexing that he's got it, the girl's flexing that she's wearing it, and the purpose it serves is literally like, if it's a commitment, it's a commitment, and I'm already in a committed relationship. I
Right.
don't think the commitment grows any stronger whether there's a ring on the finger or not, or if it's $100,000 ring or a $10,000 ring or $1,000 ring. It doesn't. It does. There's the meaning is I don't get it, at least. So I'm glad I got your opinion on that. But Dean, this has been awesome. So we're gonna wrap up with a couple quick segments, and the first one's gonna be cracking into the vault. It's gonna be a 2-minute drill. I'm gonna rip some questions off. I just want your natural intuition. You know how this works. You have a podcast, but these are questions maybe you haven't had before. So if you're ready, let's get right into it.
Send it.
All right. Cracking into the vault rapid questions. Here we go. First thing, what is the worst brand deal you've ever done? Could it be dollar amount or just embarrassed by the actual product or brand?
I think anytime I do like an in-person appearance, obviously COVID has stopped that a little bit, but like, you get paid $8,000 to go to a club in some little town and then just like have girls take pictures with you for 3 hours. Every time after ending one of those, I'm like, I just feel gross. I'm going to go to the hotel room and shower, play me my money. And I just hope we never have to talk about this again.
Do you have anxiety the next day? You're like, this is a shit show. Oh,
It's
well,
just like you feel like a zoo animal or like a piece of meat, and don't get me wrong, the money's fantastic and I appreciate the offer. But it's one of those things where I just feel a little icky afterwards every time.
Did you ever go to that one in the one in Toronto that the guy, it's like during that big film
TIFF.
festival? TIFF. Did you ever do the TIFF one?
Yeah, I think I did it the year before you. That one, actually, you talk about worst deals. That might be my worst deal. I got paid
I
$1,000
think that's
to go to
my worst
Toronto.
deal. $1,000.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was right after the show, so I had no idea. $1,000. They make it sound cool. They're like, it's TIFF, it's during the show, which is like the big theater. You're gonna meet all these people. No, this one guy just rents this big auditorium and sells tickets that are exorbitantly expensive. And then you
Right.
have to like talk and take pictures all the time, and you're paid $1,000. Yeah, you get your flights and a free meal, but like that guy is cleaning up on that
Oh,
event.
for sure. For
That
sure.
event is bull. We need to get Bachelor people out there to cancel that one.
Well,
Um,
the funny thing is, you do that same thing somewhere else and you get the right deal, you're making 10, 20 times what
10,
you
20.
would
Oh,
have paid
easily.
for
And at least, if you feel like kind of shitty about it, at least you're getting paid for it.
it.
All
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
All right. What is the biggest or best deal? So it could either be the biggest in dollar amount. You don't have to say the brand, or it's a brand that you just love doing. It was a deal that you're just like so proud of.
Yeah, I've been getting a couple Nikon deals lately, and every time they want to do a deal with me, I'm like, "Oh, you want to do a deal with me?" Like, I'm so flattered because I love Nikon cameras. Like, I started taking photography lessons on a Nikon camera, and I'm actually just doing one with them now. They're paying me, yeah, I guess, yeah, we're just talking about it. So they're paying me just under 30 grand. They sent me all of like the top of the line camera equipment that they have, which I would have paid for anyways, and they're not even asking me to post anything. They just like want me to do testimonials. And I'm like, the fact that they're paying me this much money sending me camera equipment that I already wanted really bad, and then like they're not requiring me to do anything on my end. I'm like that to me is like the best possible situation, you know?
And when you get organic brands that you use anyway, it just makes you're like, I'll do it for less just because it's so naturally integrated. And
Yeah.
someone who's in the influencing space, I see your camera. I've seen you like talk about the cameras and stuff, and I see the work that you do. And I'm like, I got to go buy that camera because then I'll be able to produce that. But little do people know it's usually the artist behind the camera that's doing it.
Sometimes. But
No, I'm
man,
sure
yeah,
the equipment helps.
every time they want to work with me, I'm like, yes, this is freaking awesome for sure.
Yeah, there was one deal, so actually same thing. It was 30K and it was literally I just had to go on radio shows and give what picks I thought for the NFL playoffs, who I thought would win and why using analytics. Didn't have to do anything on social. Like this is the best deal I could ever get in my life. It was like a dream come
Yeah.
true.
Well, and
All
you
right,
get to
so
like use your hosting personality and everything too. It's you kick ass.
yeah, it's awesome. You got to love that. Okay, so if the Bachelor never existed, where is Dean today?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I would probably be working at the same job I had before. I would imagine I would still be in recruiting. I used to be in startup recruiting, so I would help recruit like software developers, marketing, sales teams, all those kind of things. There's a saying in the recruiting industry: it's those who can do and those who can't recruit. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like you graduate college, you don't know what you're going to do, you get into recruiting, and then you just become a lifer in recruiting.
Mhm.
So I'd probably be, sitting at a desk 40 hours a week doing something like that. But it's actually funny. I got a job offer at Dollar Shave Club. I'm
Huh,
sure you know the brand.
of course.
They're based here in Los Angeles. Like 2 years after the show, the head of talent there hit me up and he was like, "Hey, like, do you?" Because I interviewed for them well before I went on the show. And like, "Hey, like, we have an opening. We remember you from last time you interviewed with us. Like, do you want to come and work for us?" And I was like, "Oh man, do I do this? Do I sacrifice 40 hours a week and
Mhm.
48 weeks a year for it was like 100K a year plus benefits?" And I was like, "Do I do this? Like, is it worth it?" And I like hit up all my friends and they were all like, "No, like, don't do that. Like, it would basically mean you took a year off and now you're getting back into it and you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life." So it was definitely a bunch of turmoil I was dealing with for a long time, but I'm kind of glad I said no. I still think about it sometimes.
I
Like
think that's something the
the stability of a real
stability, the
job,
health insurance, the consistent
Yeah.
inflow. I think it's something we're going to see a lot more of. I was stunned. Now, listen, I know that even if I could scratch into calling myself a Z-list celebrity, that is a huge accomplishment. But let's go all the way to the top and we'll talk about an A-list celebrity. I think we're going to see more of that because I saw that Jennifer Aniston is now a marketing executive. She's the chief marketing executive officer. She literally has the title with, I think it's Viral Proteins. And so for my takeaway from that is I think they're going to find people in all capacities that are going to like lead marketing groups of these big companies. And I was just fascinated that she's actually like literally an employee, an executive. And I'm curious the money that was behind that. I always think about
Oh, for
that.
sure.
Speaking of LinkedIn, I did see that your photo from LinkedIn literally looks like you're in high school and you have not changed it. And it still says that you work for Startup Tap. I assume,
Yeah.
and I had to ask you, when was the last time you logged into your LinkedIn and like, you don't still work for them, right?
Oh man, it's been a long time since I've been on my LinkedIn. I still am very close with the owner of the company. We get lunch probably a couple times a year, and he likes it because he's like, "Oh, it's press being sent startup taps way." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like he
Yeah.
has no qualms with it whatsoever. It's funny because I still have my email linked to my LinkedIn, and so I'll still get like not offers, but like interview requests being sent to my email. They're like, "Hey, I've seen you've been at Startup Tap now for 6 years," and I was like, "Wait, what? That's not right. I've taken a 4-year break, so it's really only been 2 years." But no, they've been cool with all that stuff. But yeah, no, I have not been on LinkedIn in a long time.
That's good stuff. With Dollar Shave Club, I gotta go back to that real quick. I'm just curious as you're talking. What was like the actual position? Like, what did they want? Because I'm comparing that to like the chief marketing thing Jennifer's doing. Like, what was their role for you?
It was on the HR team recruiting. It might have been just like a general recruiter, but it was like a high
Okay,
level recruiting role.
got it. Okay, just was
I think the
curious.
recruiting team is like a team of like maybe like 6 or 7 people,
Okay.
like 3 recruiters, and then like probably like 3 sourcers, that kind of thing.
Cool. Good stuff. All right, we're wrapping up here. I just have two more for you. So, if you were on any other reality show, or if you and Caitlin can go on a reality show together, what show would it be?
I'm sure this is everyone would answer this, but Amazing Race would be pretty sick.
Yeah, that would be pretty
Like,
cool.
like I could see you and Caitlin on Amazing Race and having a blast. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a blaster, an absolute disaster, just like chirping each other
Yeah.
nonstop. And what we did have someone from Amazing Race. The pay they said was pretty solid, but they were very surprised that their following went up by a total of 500 followers.
Yeah. I
500.
don't think
That's it.
I don't think you do that for the followers. That's just
No.
like kind of for the experience.
That's
If it's not
exactly what
Amazing
she
Race,
said.
I would love to be on Survivor too. I think that'd be a blast.
If there's one person in Bachelor Franchise I'd put my bet on for Survivor, it would be you. No, I could see you
Yeah, hey, I'll
starting a
take
fight.
it.
I mean, this is you. That is meant for you. Let's take this pod and get Dean on Survivor.
Yeah, let's
All
will
right.
into existence.
So last question before we wrap up, the last segment we do is trading secrets, and we look for one secret in the world of Dean, whether it's influencing, travel, technology, living in the van, that people might otherwise not know, and it could be financial related. But before we get to that, so think about it for a second. I know it's your 30th birthday next month, so I'm just curious how you're going to spend it.
That's actually a funny question. I've got answer for both of those. So this year, my 30th birthday, I'm actually going to spend it in the DMV and whatever place I need to spend it, because I'm changing my last name to my mother's maiden name. So I'm going to go from Dean Unglert to Dean Bell. And I decided my 30th birthday is the day that I want to do it, just like a clean refresh kind of thing. So that's what I'll be doing on my 30th.
Good for you.
Exciting, not partying or anything. Yeah.
Do you mind explaining why, or is it something you don't want to get into?
No, I'll definitely explain why. So my mother obviously passed away when I was 15. Love her to death, and I want her memory to be able to live on in any way, shape, or form. And I think by honoring her by changing my last name to her last name would be, pretty cool. My father, like, I've thought about whether it'd be disrespectful to him or not to basically give up his last name and move it to my mother's maiden name. But then the more I thought about it, like he gave up his last name. His last name is no longer Unglert. It's Kalsa. So I don't think that I kind of can't come to terms with being okay with that. So that's all. I'll spend my 30th. And
that's
then
a beautiful story.
Oh yeah, thanks. And then what was the other one? Just
can I ask you, do you think will you give your kids your new last name?
Oh sure, yeah. Definitely would give them Bell for sure.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. That's
and
beautiful.
It's funny because my brother's getting married next month, or in May, I guess. And his fiance is like, Brad, you should change your last name to Bell too, because I'd rather be Ashley Bell than Ashley Unglert. Like if you're taking the last name, like Bell is more enticing than Unglert is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow, that's a beautiful story.
A little bit more pretty.
That's cool. All right. Well, we'll wrap up. Thanks for sharing that too. We'll wrap up with the trading secret. So it could be anything about your business life, the influencing space, the Bachelor world, anything that like a trading secret you can give that might give some more information to the average consumer, or might even help them as they're navigating their lives financially, professionally, and personally.
I guess I don't have as much of an answer as I thought I did initially. But what's interesting is this year alone, since January of 2021, I've made more money investing than I have influencing over the past like 2 years. And it's crazy to me. You always hear the old adage, it takes money to make money, but you never realize how truthful that actually is until you start like making real money and how much money it took to make that money. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I'm like in like investing groups, like Discords, and I talk to my close friends about it all the time. And I'm like, hey, like, back in January, I'm like, hey, I'm going to dump this much money into GameStop. Like, trust me, it's going to skyrocket. And they would like do it. And then we like come back and like talk about how much money we made, or like, the tips or whatever, like we could have done better. And like, I'm always proud of how much money we're all making together, but it's like, if they're putting in a tenth of what I'm putting in, that means I'm 10xing the income at the end of it. And so it's just been absolutely crazy. So like through like some ridiculous investments like Bitcoin and like other altcoins and all that kind of stuff, like the income over the past 3 months has been absolutely insane. And obviously we're like in a pretty bullish market in terms of the crypto space, but
of course,
that's been like one of my things too, is a lot of them have like 10x their investments. And then now they're kind of getting into the place where they're able to start making like real, like substantial amounts of money. And so I guess any advice or whatever I would have is, it doesn't matter whether you're making a little or a lot, as long as you're able to like compound that and keep stacking on top of it rather than taking away the losses. But it's been crazy, man. Yeah, it's like I'll be super honest with Kaylin about that stuff too. Like for instance, like a month ago, this one like random coin I put like 10 grand in. It was just skyrocketing all of a sudden, like it had 10x overnight. And I was like sitting there like updating the Coinbase Pro app, and I was like, I made $100,000 on this one random investment that I made. Some guy I was playing Call of Duty with was like, yo, buy this coin. And
what coin
the whole
was
time
it?
I'm like, it was called the Graph. It's like it's like decentralized. I mean, who the heck knows what it is?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
but that stuff I'm super open with and honest with Kaylin too. I'm like, look, I just like made the down payment on our house off of this like ridiculous GameStop gamble I just made. Like I just made 50 grand on GameStop, so there's our down payment. Like shit like that is just so crazy to me. It's like, and you would never do it like obviously you're only investing things that you're comfortable losing, and that you should only ever do that.
Yeah.
But it's been a very crazy, like eye-opening 3 months where it's like, okay, all these things are going so well. Obviously, it's never always going to go well for you, but it's been a bit of a roller coaster, you know.
That is so cool. That's something I didn't know that you do, and it's interesting to learn more about it. Other than the graph and GameStop, can you think of any other investments you've made that you're proud of, or something that you think a little bit more about? I'm like so
Yeah,
curious about this.
I got into Bitcoin late 2020 when it was down at like 15 grand.
You son of a
Uh,
bitch, did you really?
yeah,
God, that's
I didn't get in
amazing.
that. I didn't get in that big. I wish I got in bigger. So I have a guy who does the crypto investing for me, at least just with Bitcoin. I gave him like 50 grand in November. And I'm up, I think, on that investment alone, just $80,000. So I've turned 50 into
Let's
100.
go, Dean, from
I
financially
agree.
troubled to making all this. I mean, it's trading at $58,793. That is awesome, dude. That is
So
awesome.
I haven't checked the account lately, but every time I check it, it's dude, he's killing it. And obviously Bitcoin is obviously the one to thank in that regard. But yeah, it's crazy. It's like I said, man, it's like to be able to just like nonchalantly give a guy $50,000 to invest for you and like not have to worry about it. I never in my life thought that I would be able to be in a position to do that.
Mhm.
And obviously I'm very, very grateful. And obviously I owe that entirely to the Bachelor franchise. So it's crazy for sure. And you know, you see returns like that and you're like, okay, cool. I just doubled my salary in one investment from 4 years ago. You know what I mean?
It's the coolest. And two things, and I'm going to wrap up because I could talk to you about this for hours. I know I've already taken too much of your time. But one, you mentioned 10x and you mentioned percentage. And I think it's really important for anyone out there listening, even if you're investing $100 and you make $10 on your $100, don't look at it like $10 and what the value of that is. Look at that as a return, as a percentage, because you just made 10%. And if you can make 10%, think about what that correlates to savings account, which are paying 0.001. The other thing
Right.
too is Dean alluded to it perfectly, is like risk tolerance and risk management is so important. Understanding what your bankroll is and as a percentage of that, of what you're willing to lose and gamble, and having an idea. I make the correlation to casino. You go to the casino with 15 buddies. Everyone's going to have a different strategy. Someone's going to be like, yeah, I'm going to go put 10 grand on red. Another person's like, I'm not spending $1. I'm just going to get your free drinks. Those are definitions of different risk adversity, and you have to understand yours before you make any move. The other thing, I think you said it right. We talked a little bit about The Bachelor, and people can beat up producers in the show and every angle and every which way, especially cast that comes off. But all of us that have a platform because of the show are able to monetize it in ways likely we never would have before. And so we can chirp all day long, we can beat and bash them up, but that show has made every person that's come off it who they are. Now, what you do with it is up to you. But I couldn't agree more that in the back of our heads, we all have to be very thankful and feel fortunate for the show that we did come from and the opportunities it's given us.
The irony in my case too is I hate reality television. So like I was on the show, like I watch it every once in a while when Kaylin watches it, but like I hate reality television. But I'm super, super grateful for the things that it has opened doors for me for. You know what I mean? So
What is your outlook on cryptocurrency? And then also, NFTs are a wild place to be. I'm currently in the process of trying to break into how to make one and put a bachelor spin on it. So I'm curious what your take. That's a trading secret, but what's your
yeah,
take
there you
on the
go.
whole industry?
Yeah, dude, the NFT thing is crazy. Didn't like Elon Musk's wife just make a song and they sold that song for, well, it's always funny too because they're always trading it in like Ethereum. So it's like 1,800 Ethereum with it,
Yeah.
which is $90,000, something crazy like that.
Nuts.
I'm not big on the NFT space, but there are like certain coins that I'm investing in that I think help like kind of like gas the NFTs, the
Sure.
non-fungible tokens as they're calling it.
Yep.
But yeah, man, it's crazy. I guess I don't really have much of an input to make on that, but there are things where it's like even people like you said, man, a Bachelor NFT would be pretty interesting to see
Pretty
exactly what
wild.
happens. But yeah, like I said, I'm in like this Discord with a bunch of my buddies, and they're always like talking about like the trades they're making and all that kind of stuff. And I've noticed actually like the more trades I make, the less successful I am. So I try to like buy a bunch of something, hold on to it for as long as I can until I feel comfortable with the returns on it, and then get out of it. And I'm not, like they're all like swing trading things. Like I can't remember exactly what they were just getting into today, but they're like
Mhm.
trying to buy the highs and sell the lows kind of thing. Not really my strategy, just because I don't. I've noticed less return when I do that type of stuff. But
Timing in the market is just, especially in this world, timing is really tough. trying
you
to
really have
time
to
it.
like hyper vigilant, like knowing
Mhm.
exactly what's happening, like see the pumps and recognize like the trends and the patterns and all that kind of stuff. And if you're not paying so much attention to that, like I don't, because I just don't understand it, you're just like playing catch up, and in that market, you're gonna lose money at the end of the day. But yeah,
Exactly.
man, the NFT space is freaking crazy. I still don't even really fully understand it, but it's the hot thing right now.
It's wild. And then to even see like some of the pro football players like Rob and Patrick Mahomes come into the space, they're selling stuff for like 500,000, 1 million bucks. It's crazy. We live in a wild world. We'll see where it goes. But Dean, give Kayla my best. Thank you so much for being here, and tell everyone where they can find you, your travel blog, your podcast, everything you have going on.
You know what? Don't worry about any of that stuff. It's just an honor to be here, Jason. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, Dean,
Maybe one of these days we'll be reunited in person again.
that would be awesome. If you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it in the recap. I'll tell you where to find Dean. But Dean, I really appreciate it. It really is always an honor to catch up. It's been way too long. We need another night out and just go tear it up. But in the meantime, good luck with everything else, and congratulations on all your success.
Thanks, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, my man. Thanks for being here.